let's call the meeting to order. Mike, can you please call roll?
Ms. Pinecki.
Present.
Dr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Eisenblair.
Here.
Ms. Hogue.
Here.
Ms. Hollingworth.
Here.
Ms. Paoli. Mr. Seidel.
Happily here.
Vice President Hogerl.
Here.
President Crooked.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mike, could you please read the statement concerning open public meetings?
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 12th, 2022, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. A written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were emailed to the Courier Post and the Retrospect newspaper.
Okay, thank you. We do not have any presentations today, all right?
Correct.
All right, so moving on. Curriculum committee reports. Curriculum committee, we are meeting next Wednesday, so no report from me this week. Dave, did you have finance yet?
Nope, next week.
Lynn, policy.
Yes, we met last Thursday. We discussed, there are 2 policies on the agenda for first reading, an updated policy for dress and grooming for teaching staff and new policy for support staff, just cleaning up and updating. We all got a little relaxed during COVID, and it's just to encourage more professionalism in their attire. So those are on for first reading. We discussed the resolution, we've talked about it for a few meetings now. We drafted, our solicitor reviewed and edited, and it's regarding our opposition to mandatory changes to policy and regulation 8465, which is bias crimes and bias related acts, and policy 5512, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And these policies were the result of an administrative code requiring that all bias-related acts be reported to the local police department and the prosecutor's office. So we have a resolution on the agenda listing reasons that the board might oppose these changes. And finally, we discussed the district's position on a parent's right to opt out. This is not something that the board voted on. This was just a discussion that we had. The policy or the position is on the website, as well as the opt-out form. So the intent is to provide no barriers except for submitting the opt-out form for sex education, health education, family life education, and dissection of animals. All of those are by New Jersey law. A parent can opt their child out of. And then the district recognizes there are some other instances in which a parent might seek an opt-out that falls outside of that statute. So it lists procedures for that, meeting with the principal. Do you want to take over this?
Yeah, that's basically it. So we want to be able to address that all of the protections under the New Jersey statute for opting out will be a very low hurdle. It's just you simply fill out the form that's in accordance with the statute. And as you began to say, we also recognize for a variety of reasons that sometimes students and sometimes parents may wish to opt out of something that goes beyond the scope of what's required by the statute. And then the process there is to schedule a meeting with the principal to have an open dialogue about understanding the unique concerns that may be brought. The principal will have an opportunity to talk factually about what is and isn't part of the curriculum or being presented. And once those 2 views are heard, then the school district will follow, and the principal will follow up with what the options are available in that case.
And other than that, we looked at 6 existing policies just to keep up to date on our policy manual and found no changes that were necessary. So that was it.
I want to thank Lynn for her work on the resolution. That was really, I think, well done. And I think the whole policy committee think we put our heads together and worked a lot, but then you really got the ground running for that, so thank you. And thank you, Gino, because I thought you did a really nice job on the opt-out letter, and I know that's hard, and you kind of somehow, I thought you wrote it very well and very clearly, so I thank you for that.
Well, like with most anything else we do, it's a collaborative effort. We involve the principals for feedback. We involve a lot of different people, try to get as many points of view as possible, and implement something we know we can deliver on consistently.
Yeah, it's great. Any other questions, comments for Lynn? Okay, LRFP committee, right?
Yes.
All right.
So we met on Tuesday. We talked about the fact that in the past 2 weeks, there were 2 visioning sessions here in the library. The first one had to do with the Hopkins parcel. It was a very interactive evening. Ron, the architect, showed a layout of the property, the high school property as it exists, and then the new Cooley Hall addition that we got with the land swap, and had an overlay with different sizes of things that had been suggested for that area. A full-size turf field, a baseball field, an aquatic center, a early childhood center. And so the exercise was everyone got to sit around and draw, okay, here you go, you have a clean slate. What would you put there? What can fit? He had parking spaces there because you had to figure out, okay, if I put parking, where does that go? So it was an interesting exercise. And so we worked through that, and he took in a lot of feedback in that session. And then last week's session was, that was last week, not this week, that was last week, right? That one was 2 weeks ago, and then it was last week that we had the second visioning session, and that one really had to do with the schools themselves. Just reimagining classrooms, what it would take to make the spaces more vibrant, more exciting for learning spaces, modular furniture so that one classroom could be moved around for different purposes, lighting. So he just showed different things that they've done in different schools. Then talked about some other things that we could potentially do with adding a gymnasium at perhaps Lizzie and Tatum that would not only separate out the APR so that you had a cafeteria and a gymnasium, that would, as Shannon Simkus was here, talk about how that greatly helps them with scheduling because they're very tightly trying to schedule, every last little minute they have to use that one space gym and lunches and classrooms. But then having a full-size gymnasium could also help revenue for the district. So we want to, as we're looking at all of these things, make sure that we are getting as much as we can. What of this can be funded by the state? What of it would be revenue producing? So making sure that we are being fiscally responsible as we're looking at all the different possibilities. So there have been all of the surveys and the interaction with community, administration, faculty, students, community, and now Ron's got all of those things. Ron, our architect, has all of those things and will be working to come back to us with here are different options. So, but we've got to start running because that would need to be submitted to the DOE in January in order for us to then start moving ahead. So there's a lot that's going to be happening over the next couple of months now.
Any questions, Fernanda? Great, and thank you for your work on that and the visioning sessions. You're like full-time. That's my job. Full-time volunteer right now. But so thank you. Okay, PTA updates.
Sure, I'll give a quick update. I attended the Central Elementary PTA meeting last night, shared a couple of reminders with primarily the moms on the line to talk about a couple of things, reminding them about the Board of Ed meetings and schedule, encouraging them to attend. We talked a little bit about the bond referendum, kind of a preview of what's ahead in September of '23. And also an important PSA that our New Jersey elections are occurring on 11/8. That overlaps with fall break. So if you are going to be out of town and enjoying the sunshine somewhere else, you should feel free to go online and do a quick Google search for New Jersey mail-in ballot, and it is a super simple process. So we talked a little about that. The team shared some of the exciting stuff they have underway, successful fashion show, exciting activities like ice cream socials, and it's just a very engaged group, lots of activities afoot. So that's it.
Thank you.
And then, yes, I went to the middle school today. One of the things that, and this is a holdover from last year as well, they have been collecting funds, but they very much wanted to be in step with what's happening with the referendum. So they didn't want to be doing any big projects without knowing what was happening with the referendum, nothing that would have to be reversed or nothing that would be redundant. So they do want to move forward with some improvements, but they're holding tight until they hear what might come out of the referendum. But there are some things that they wanted to look at as well, perhaps basketball courts, outside basketball courts or whatever. So they're talking about that. And a Gaga pit as well. So those are some of the discussions. They talked about Veterans Day now that we're post-COVID, that they wanted to get veterans involved again. That's always a great thing for the students. The Spirit Week dance and a bunch of upcoming social events for them. But all of that's good. It feels really good to be talking about all of these normal things again. So yes, they are ramping up and ready to go for the upcoming school year.
Yeah, I was at Tatum PTA and similar. It felt really good to be in person and great showing. I was impressed by how many people came out to the PTA meeting. So that was great. Planning for the new year. One of their goals is they're working on engaging the grown-ups that maybe are less engaged, that haven't been as involved. So they're looking for new ways to reach out and get people involved. There's been a request from the teachers for flooring for the Gaga pit, which I thought was interesting. And I guess the kids are getting muddy when they're playing in it. And so they would, the PTA is working on that. Talked about the 5th grade celebrations committee and getting ready to do that. And they now have a diversity, equity, and inclusion chair, which is a new committee meant to provide inclusion and allow children to be seen, and looking for all different areas of ways that kids can be valued in the community. And that's a new addition now for them. So great. Any other PTA meetings? Updates? Community groups? HET, someone want to talk to that, the rally in the alley? I put you on the spot, I should have given.
Our meeting's next week, but what is the date on that? Do you know it off the top of your head?
Is it November 9th?
November 19th, yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So November 19th is the rally in the alley. Tickets are available. It's, funds are going to benefit the HMHS auditorium. So, good. Okay. Dr. Priola, do you have anything for Assistant Superintendent report?
So a couple quick updates. We ran a successful vaccination clinic today. We administered about 100 doses. Some people getting their shot for the first time, many of which were the, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, the bivalent, which is the latest version of the vaccine that includes the Omicron strain. We are in the midst of our PD planning for November, our 3 days. We're making really good progress. We have a really exciting offering for our staff, and it all falls under three kind of buckets, right? One where some sessions are required for all staff, some sessions are optional, and some are self-designed by staff themselves. We have a variety of outside presenters coming in, working with staff. We have some presentations and sessions being facilitated by our own staff. And so we're excited about that. Chris Gwynn and I have another meeting tomorrow, and we plan on having a final schedule out within the next week or two. And finally, tomorrow will be the third and final day of our Framing Your Thoughts training for our elementary teachers. You know, this is closing the loop on a 5-year process that started 5 years ago. And we've talked about it a lot in the board meeting, so I'm not going to go over everything, but I do want to highlight that this was something that started very much as a special education initiative for a small population of students. And word of mouth and success of the program grew, and teachers were asking for training on it to bring it to general education. COVID put a wrench in those plans for a little bit, but this was the fourth cohort of teachers that have gone through this 3-day training. And once again, so Framing Your Thoughts is a sequential and systematic method of instruction of writing that really focuses on sentence structure. And it is a complement to the current general education writing curriculum. And I also have to give a really special thanks to the elementary principals and the elementary administrative assistants, because putting this training on was very touch and go. Everyone likely knows the sub shortage that is out there. And when we started the training on Thursday, as of Tuesday afternoon around 2:00, we weren't even sure we were going to be able to run the session because we were short 8 subs, and that's 8 classrooms without teachers that we simply couldn't run. But between the principals and the administrative assistants literally making direct calls to ESS subs and really trying to encourage them to come in, and then some creative scheduling on the parts of the principals, which gives them gray hairs in the morning, because we get a text at around 6:15 in the morning that show your call outs and what's unfilled, and the texts start flying right away, how we can begin filling those gaps. But it really demonstrates our commitment to the professional development of this program, and we were successful in making it work. So we're really, really proud of that.
That's great.
Great, thank you. Okay, Mr. Klaus, do you have anything for
Not really,
President's report?
just one thing is that, as you know, before we start broadcasting live and recording, Haddonfield Civic Association, HCA, used to record our meetings and post them. We might reach out to them again and talk about maybe reestablish that relationship. There's been some concern about the quality of the stuff we're posting up there, so we're going to try to solve that. I mean, it's take a lot of resources for us to fix that. So we're talking about maybe having them take that responsibility back over.
Okay, so for my board president's report, I don't have much, but I do have to apologize. At the last meeting, I stopped a member of the public during comment period when he said a citizen's name, and I was wrong. As board members, we can't discuss private citizens or mention private citizens' name, but if a member of the public is going to quote if the member of the public is going to quote a private citizen, they can do that. I was not aware. I thought I was supposed to ensure that nobody said a private name. So I do apologize. And so, yeah, so we did speak to our lawyer who did give the advice. So I am sorry. I really thought that I was doing what it was I was supposed to do. So my apologies. And I did reach out to the person to extend my apologies for not knowing that rule in the first place. Okay. So leading into, well, not really leading, there's no good, I don't have a segue. Linda is going to now do she's kicking off our Equity Council discussion, which is our board discussion for this week. It's only the second time we're doing it, so we're still learning. I think we talked a little bit how I think last time I really didn't have, I feel like I should have given more groundwork. So we're learning the process. So we talked a little bit about that. And so we're going to suggest maybe try to give a little bit of a starter. Right. I think I didn't do that enough last time.
Well,
So
we're making it up as we go along. So we'll keep refining. Superintendent Klaus, do you have just some background that you can give us? on-
Sure, just
Yeah.
a brief background of the Equity Council. So the Equity Council came out of the strategic plan goal that was set 3 years ago of cultural responsiveness. In the summer of 2020, the Equity Council was established. There were at that point 39 members, varying from parents, teachers, administrators, board of ed people, members, student groups. They met monthly for 2 hours to talk about topics. The first year was primarily education, learning, reading, and discussing. The 3 real expectations were the commitment to work of diversity, equity, and justice, the understanding experiences and perceptions of faculty, staff, and community members, developing a common knowledge base, developing and implementing things related to the strategic plan, and then the Equity Council, eventually, the members would step up and take leads in professional development and other activities outlined in the Equity Plan. Year 2 broke into more subcommittee work, which has been happening on the last year. Some of the things that came out of the equity were the survey data on our we did show there was growth in the area of cultural responsiveness. We had town hall meetings. The high school had the Equity Summit, which was very successful in neighborhood schools. We had the World Cafe, multiple student voice groups where students got a chance to talk about what they feel the school district needs. And then we had building equity leaders come into play where they would have individuals start taking leads on the building level. I think ultimately the goal is to have this as more of a building piece, but that's in the future. So that's where we are now. Now we know that there are some things we want to discuss. That's why we don't discuss it. So
Okay. So I had circulated to you guys just some things to think about as we could discuss it. But maybe what we could start with is I feel like, and I mean, I remember when this was started. There was definitely, it was right after George Floyd had happened, and I think that the entire country was at a place where, like, we need to do something. So I think that this was all started from a very good place. And then I think that we need to look at 2 years later, what currently are the goals? Do they align with our strategic plan? And are the goals measurable? So just maybe we can talk about those things first.
So Chuck, you mentioned cultural responsiveness increased on surveys. How is that measured and how are we defining cultural responsiveness?
Yes, so we contract with a third-party vendor called Panorama, and they provide us with a bank of questions that are normed nationwide. And I think there are 6 subset questions on equity that are asked of both our students and staff. They've been asked every year of implementation of the survey for the past 3 years. So that's those. I can pull up the exact questions if you like.
That would be helpful just because I have an idea in my head of what cultural responsiveness may be, and I'm not sure if it's sort of the right idea. Is it awareness of cultures outside of your own? So for example, learning about different faith communities that exist in our country or different, I just don't know what the.
I'll get that information.
Thanks.
And the survey is given to teachers or students or both? Okay.
Mhm.
I know you share survey results, I'm sorry. I do read what you guys send. It's like a lot. I guess.
The culturally responsive questions though are only administered to students in grade 6 through 12.
Okay.
That's a simple question. So is there any, council's kind of a word that's a little loaded with a lot of responsibility. So are there any other working groups or committees or the like that are akin to the Equity Council in district right now? Doing the work of either exercises in our other strategic goals or just solving the everyday strategic problems of the district?
I mean, I think the math committee.
I was asking.
What's that?
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, this is, and I'm just throwing this out there because I thought this was, because I agree with you. I was like, who else? That's what I was thinking. Who else is doing this work? Because one of the issues of it being because I was on it and Lynn was on it and Adam was on it. We are so high level, like we're not in the everyday work of the school. And this work is working with the kids. If we really want to focus on belongingness, this needs to be a picture of who are these students in the building? How are they feeling? How are they, I feel like one of our issues we ran into was we were operating at such a high level. So when you're thinking about who's doing this work, one of the things that I thought of when I was at the Tatum PTA and they were saying they have an equity count, they have a diversity equity committee. And they had given me a little overview of what they do. And it's, they focus on visibility and making all students feel seen and accessibility and students with special needs and kids understanding holidays they may not be used to. And it just seems like, I feel like this work is so personal to the students and that you can't, from the bird's eye view, really understand how are students feeling isolated. Are the students who are less social and more introverts, are they not feeling included? Because that's an important part of belonging, and you're going to address that really boots on the ground, not higher level. So
That's not the question I was asking at all. The question I was asking are there other groups that tackle problems that are structured like the equity council?
No, but my point
That's the
was
question.
that, okay, so my point was that they started something for PTA in that sense. So that's what made me think,
That's not the school district.
that's not the school district, but
So,
But Chuck, would you
The
think
answer
the
was-
math committee is similar?
Well, that's what I
it's a
was
different
thinking of,
focus,
the
but
math committee.
was like 50 people. I was part of that before I was a board member and then finished as a board member. And I feel like that involves the same kinds of people you're describing
But
are
what is
in
the
that.
oversight for the math committee? I feel like there's oversight there. Is that right? Is there,
Would
who
you-
do they report to? And
curriculum committee.
So there's a structure, there's an oversight and a structure.
But there are administrators on equity council also, right?
Well, and the bulk of the equity council for the last 2 years has been teachers. I mean, they're the ones so a couple board members were on it, administration was on it, so people in the district. And then there were only 3 to 5 community members. So the bulk of it was teachers. So they're the ones that are in the schools every day. They know whether kids are engaged and feel like they belong. They know the curriculum better than we do, right? I feel like that they were the real meat of the council, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think, because they have a sense of students, what the students are feeling and what's everyone else. I mean, I think one of our core issues is if we continue with this, what does it look like going forward? Having been on it, I feel like it's not, we have to make sure we have the oversight but I don't know if we can, I feel like as a board level, it's not a board level thing. It feels like it's more organic. It should be more organic than that, to have it actually have an influence.
So I think that, the first year to me was so incredibly valuable. It offered so much time for self-reflection, understanding the community better, both the teachers and staff perspective and students, and examining our biases, every kind of bias. So I thought it was so valuable that I think it would be great if everyone could do it. The ready agreements, I think they should be on every wall in the school. The last year, I think our numbers fell off. So when we started to go into committees, I know that there were some months that I went that we didn't feel like we could get a lot of work done because there weren't enough people in the committee that were there, whether that was scheduling conflicts or whatever the reason, or not enough people in the committee to begin with. So when we started to do the real work, mine was looking at policy, I feel like we fell off a little bit. But the structure was there, we just didn't have enough engaged at the end, at least in my little committee. I can't speak to the others.
I think that's one of the questions that Linda had in her discussion topics, but that was what I was gonna say. You explained that it's policy for you, but what is the work that the Equity Council is trying to do? Is it a space for self-reflection to allow people within the districts, teachers, administrators, Board of Ed, community members, to have a space to engage in that work of self-reflection, or is it something that's more focused on the work of the district or the teacher?
I think it started with the education piece and then it segued to let's like do the work. But what were there, 5, 6 committees? So I can only speak to one.
Well, education is in self-reflection. Right, is that what you mean, or do you mean like, I guess
Self-education.
Self-education, yeah, that's what I meant.
Not educating the community, but just learning
Right, yeah.
ourselves so that then we could do the work better.
Is my memory right that the Equity Council came into existence after there were building level, year-long meetings? So like Tracy did a middle school one. I know there was an elementary cross group.
There
There
were,
were some,
there was work
level.
being done based on a strategic goal, which the cultural
Yeah.
responsiveness. And so there were different pockets of this, and the Equity Council was brought together almost to coordinate those pieces,
Okay.
like a better way of saying it. When Linda asked the question, does it align with the strategic plan goal, right? So you can look at what's happening with the strategic plan, so yes or no, right? That's that. But that's where it came into play. It came into play, at first, working with administration to try to understand the goal and get better at it. And then trying to, disseminate that learning. And so I think that's where, in theory, that's what we were going. We were going to do that. I still think it's a valuable goal. I still think, so the question is, you don't change your destination. Maybe you take a different vehicle, or maybe you look at how you can get there in a different, better, more efficient way. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So this is important work. This is still our strategic plan, cultural responsiveness. And it is not, and it is, if you read the strategic plan goal, it is a pretty broad piece, and it's supposed to be understanding others, right? And belonging. You go back to that, right? People who don't agree with you, that's fine. You can be respectful and appreciate each other. And ultimately, this is to support that goal. This is a vehicle to get to that goal. And so when we ask the questions and answer questions, like, can we show we're getting there?
Yeah,
I think that's where we're trying to get to the nitty-gritty with that.
I think that's all spot on, Chuck. And I would go back to what Gino was saying about kind of looking at using data and looking at the way people are responding, kids, adults, teachers, et cetera, on the same set of questions and improvements. I would view that as a real live indicator that things are moving in a positive direction. I think that's fairly indisputable, I would say, in my opinion. I think to your point though, Chuck, this all comes back to our strategic plan goals, right? We all want kids to be not only smart, but, able to be compassionate people, able to be tolerant of others who are not like them, or they perceive as unlike them. And all of these objectives don't go away, as you say, because things potentially tapered off or there wasn't the right structure in place. So I would strongly advocate that we kind of look at what's the right protocol, how do we put the right process, how do we put the right leaders, how do we make sure the community is actively engaged, not a handful of parents, but how do we engage with folks who have opinions and care about this at all levels, right? This is important for our kids and for our community.
I was just gonna say, one of the issues we had too was we really didn't have a structure for having new members, and how would we, like really, we need to look at that and how do we solicit membership from a lot of different groups. We want to make sure there's full representation and that all of the unique needs of the community are met, or that there's a venue for people to bring those to the group. So.
Well, yeah, and when you get back to the data piece, kind of similar to what I talked about when I reported on the CUSAC scores, where, we scored the highest we ever have in the last several years, but we're not at 100%. When you look at some of our data, particularly around this idea of belonging, which we talked about we first talked about the last meeting as one of the district goals this year, that we see as a culmination of all of our strategic goals. Our data could be better. It's not bad, but it could be better. When we talk about overall, all of the students in grades 3 through 12 47% of students indicated they feel that they responded favorably that they belong.
That's 53 that say that they
47. That's a low number. Now, data is data, right? There are different ways to look at data. When you filter that in by grade levels, like third through fifth graders, we're in the 90th percentile nationally of students responding favorably to belonging. That's really good, but I want to see it at 100%. When we look at the secondary level, or specifically the high school, we're in the 70th percentile nationally. But we're still looking at nearly half of the students not indicating favorably that they feel like they belong. And we believe this is an important part of our mission in the school district, that people need to feel like they belong, they need to feel represented. And what I'm proud of as we're improving in this work, we're not seeing a decline in SAT scores. We're still the number one school district in the area as far as SAT scores. We're not taking our eye off the ball as far as academics and rigor. I think this is important. And the data, while it isn't the end all be all, right? Because we know you work with data long enough, you can't put all your eggs in that basket. It does help to guide and inform our track where we're going.
Gina, to build on that, I was thinking like the events that the Equity Council sponsored or hosted, like for the high school students, or the World Cafe, I think those should be counted as data. I know it's not survey data,
Exactly.
but we didn't have those events before, and now we do, right? And so then can we improve the quality of those events, or which stakeholders are involved in those events, and who do we want to grow, right? I think those kinds of metrics are important also,
I agree.
not just self-report data,
Yeah,
which is important too,
Yeah, that's
but
why
you know what I
I
mean,
think
all of
so.
it.
Anytime I talk about data,
Yeah.
I think it's always talking about the limitations of
Yes, right.
Right? We want to take a photo album approach, not a snapshot.
I am absolutely an outsider. I did attend a couple of the events, but I was not part of the meetings. And this is just my opinion from the outside. So just want to put that out there. It seems to me like there was a lot of good work that was done, but as the numbers started to fall off, there's not oversight. The bylaws aren't, we all know that the bylaws aren't what they need to be. They need to be revisited. So it seems like the structure is really not perfect at this point. And we know that we want to look at our strategic plan again. That is up and coming for us. I personally think that especially if it's the teachers and administrators and board members that are part of it, all of those people are involved in these topics and touching these topics in other ways at this moment. I personally think that we should put a pause, look at our strategic plan, see what do we need to further our strategic plan, and then decide, is it this, is it something else, rather than just continuing this without making sure that we're aligned with where we're going. So my personal opinion, for what it's worth, knowing that I'm an outsider on this.
I would love to get feedback from the teachers. Just to see if they think it's valuable as it is, what kind of changes they think need to be made. Maybe they've got too much going on and this is something that they want to step back from. But we had so many amazing teachers on this council that I just think that their input is really important as to how we move this forward.
That makes sense.
I'm an outsider also. I'm not a part of the council, and I attended the World Cafe, and then I attended the middle school, whatever, I think precursor to Equity Council. I think we should keep it. For a mostly white district, we need to be very thoughtful and intentional about exposing our children to all kinds of, people, differences, differences, thank you. And so I think as a parent, knowing that there's a group dedicated to being thoughtful about this that meets monthly, I feel great about that. I can sleep easier. It's something that we talk about a lot at our houses. Are we exposing our kids enough? Are we just raising them in a bubble? And I grew up in southern Vermont, which is also mostly white. there was not a lot of diversity. There was a lot of socioeconomic diversity. That was about it. But my schooling, we were told all the time, where you live is not where everyone lives. And they would put us on school buses and take us places. And so I imagine, I didn't understand the structure back then, but I imagine there was some sort of group thinking about this intentionally. And I really think it impacted me, like maybe who I am without that kind of intentionality. I just think there's so many moving parts to running a school district that knowing that there's a dedicated group for this is super important, because this is the stuff that can be put to the bottom. So that's what I worry about.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
The work that's being done is critically important. So I don't want you to think that that's what I was saying. I just think that the structure of this, at this moment in time, probably isn't working. And we either need to say, what are we doing? Is this a board level, or is this a community level or a building level initiative? Not that
Right.
go away, but I'm really looking at the structure as it is right now. What is it? I mean, is it a board? Is it a board committee? Is it a building committee? I mean, I actually don't even know the answer to that. So it's the structure that I think really needs to be addressed.
Yes, go.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, so thinking about it from kind of a tactical perspective, is the opportunity, from my understanding, it is on pause right now anyway, right? So just, we're already at a pause moment. Is the next step to kind of put it into action terms to form, dare I say, another committee that includes not just folks sitting at this table, but others who have a voice and a perspective, to get feedback from teachers, and then kind of come up with a really concrete, like, in 90 days, we're here, and this is what we're aiming for. I mean, it sounds as though, I don't want to put words in everyone's mouths, but it sounds as though conceptually, we believe this work is important. We believe it would be a big gaping hole, and frankly, in my opinion, a disservice to our kids and this community to not be having these conversations. We also know it needs to be fixed, right? We can't just flip the switch and go back to the same process. So can we not say, we're going to create, a team to revamp this?
Well, and I'm sorry, just to facilitate this conversation isn't really to come up with a solution. It is for us the board to discuss it, for administration to come back and look at it and come up with a solution. So.
And on that, my non-solution, just throwing it out there, I feel like in terms of when we talk about inclusivity and belongingness, that if, like, there's that expression, like when you get a job as, and no offense to our administrators, but when you get a job as an administrator, like the first thing you do is blame your predecessor when a problem comes up. And the second thing you do is form a committee, because nothing gets done with the committee, but it looks like you're doing stuff. And I'm not saying we're not getting any, do you know that, right?
I love that you said that, because I've seen that happen.
Because I
and thank
kind
you
of
for
feel
telling the
like
truth.
that's what's happening here. Like we have the best intentions and really good intentions, but it's not we serve the students, and I don't feel like it's serving the students. I feel like it hasn't gotten much further than the Zoom meetings. And so I guess my suggestion for that, just looking at the structures of schools and what we can handle, is I do like the idea of having it, because now we do have equity people in each building. And I'm wondering if there's a way that it is more of a building level thing. Just because the nature of belongingness, the individual needs of all the schools, and I'm not like saying this has to happen, but I'm just throwing it out there as an alternative of the way that it's run, because I feel like we might have more impact to the students, and we also might hit those needs that high level we won't see, boots on the ground. Somebody's going to see, and then so-and-so talks to so-and-so in the line and says, listen, my kid's having a lot of trouble because they're just so introverted, they don't really get out there, and then it's like, okay, maybe we can look at a playground group, like little things that happen all the time that teachers and families do, that when we have a larger group, we don't really get to do that. So that's just throwing it out there. But I didn't want to insult anybody about the forming the committee, because we do a lot of work with committees. But I'm hoping you all know that expression, and that I know Lisa does.
The building level, who's the professor who works with the group? Sorry, I forget the name. I haven't.
Dr. Zion.
Dr.
Yeah, Dr.
Zion,
Zion,
yeah.
thank you. I think Dr. Zion worked with building level structures. I think it's worth asking maybe if Dr. Zion knows kind of historically what kind of how everything.
We have
checked out.
building level people now.
No, but
we
before
didn't
building level
initially.
people, there were parent meetings, it was advertised. I had middle schooler and elementary schooler, so there were parent meetings that folks were invited to. And I decided to attend the middle school, I didn't go to the elementary one. This is a few years ago, it's before the pandemic. This is when the world was.
I think I went to that.
I think I might have met you
Some
at one
paper,
of those.
yes, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so-
and I think, yeah,
And
so.
that I think was useful, but I do think it missed something that I feel like a bigger group may catch. So maybe it's, like you were saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe it's this combo, like maybe there's something building level plus
Right,
something
yeah.
that's like making sure resources are going where they need to go, or I don't know, bigger picture things. Like what is the experience of students from middle school to high school, where you need a bigger group to, right, like those, I don't know. I can't think of
Right,
good
yeah,
examples,
to
but
the
I
alignment,
think
you
it's
know,
with
in terms
both.
of alignment
Right.
and things across elementary schools. Yeah, so I
I
can
think
see
it's kind of a
like
combo.
marrying all the ideas.
Right,
Well, I think
I
one
think
other
that's
important thing, I went in thinking this was all about the kids, but it's not just about the kids too. Having this staff perspective, teacher perspective, what their environment is like too, I thought was really, that's something else that we need to consider.
Yes, actually, we did do that too, that's.
Greg, you were trying to.
Right.
Just everything you're saying, it comes back to a structure that we need to put in place, which I don't think is, we're gonna solve. We all, I think, say, hey, it's important, we need it. But what does the structure look like? What are the goals? And how are we gonna measure them? To move it forward, to make sure it continues and brings value to the students. And I don't think it's our job to do that. I think it's the administration to come back and say, all right, here, we're gonna do this, we all support it. Can we deliver it with the resources we have?
Right.
If the answer is yes, let's put a structure and say, here's our goals, here's what we wanna do, and here's how it's gonna be structured, make sure there's enough support. The teachers are mainly running this, I would think, it's based on, who was involved. And we need, if it started at 40 people and now it's 20, clearly something's wrong. We gotta get it back to 40 and keep it robust going forward, otherwise it's gonna
keep doing this, you know,
keep doing this, we're not gonna get anywhere.
Okay.
I've heard words all night that describe short-term goals, short-term measurement, short-term solutions. This isn't a short-term problem. This isn't like, hey, our math score stunk a few years ago, we're gonna form a committee, restructure math, and then off we go and run. I was trying to think, I asked a question about what does it look like? What it looks like to me is we decided to speak Spanish as a district. And you have the native Spanish speakers, because they're starting in kindergarten or going up. Very encouraged to hear 90% in elementary schools would score, overall it's 47%, because what that tells me is they're getting it early. They're natives in this environment of inclusiveness and diversity. Not everybody is. So the measurement time has to be much longer. You're like, yeah, it hasn't impacted our SAT scores, but it's also being rejected most of that group, maybe because they don't have the space for both. Because it's a change that I gotta invest in it, but I still gotta get this great score because my parents are on my back. That I think our expectation has to change, because I've seen a lot of enthusiastic committees be formed that fall apart because they don't think they're working. Because the measurements say that they're not working, but it's the measurement that's wrong, not the committee that's wrong, not the work that's not really important. But it's gonna take a whole lot longer, because this isn't a class that you can take and make everybody better. And this is a culture, and culture has to be measured at a completely different level. So if I had to describe the problem is we want to speak Spanish, but we're still native English speakers. But not everybody is at this point, because we've had successes. It's just, we're focused on the disappointing side, not on the successful side.
I think we
That's
all
my
want to
opinion.
speak Spanish. We need to make sure that we have the structure in place. You're absolutely right. You can't measure it in a year. This is a marathon.
And it's not just about the students, because the faculty
Oh, sorry.
aren't native Spanish
Right.
speakers either.
Right.
But guess what? They're not going anywhere. So a lot of the effort has to be in, they're the ones that are gonna be teaching the language in the first place. So that's,
So
I
what's
wanna
the
see
right-
the measurement on the faculty side first.
Yeah.
Then it'll, because they're here for long periods of time, right? We have teachers that are here for 20, 30 years. They're the ones that are imprinting our students. We need to focus to make sure that what their stamp says is what we're hopeful that it says.
I agree with you. So I know that we're probably running out of time. I think that everybody at the table agrees that the work is important and valuable. I think that it's the structure that's maybe making us look a little harder at this, and I think that maybe that's the place where we need some focus to say what happens moving forward. So one more time, it's nice to talk about this and say, good luck with that, guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. And I do want to say, like, and you know, Lynn and I've said this, there's a lot of value to it. And I think once we get the structure, we can really see, like, I think everyone, Greg, you put it very eloquently. Like, I think once we have that structure, we can really, you know, make it into what your vision is. Okay. All right. Okay, going to public comments. Okay, we now begin the open public comment session. Members of the community are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes at this time. If you'd like to make an additional comment, you must wait until each person has had a chance to make their initial statement. All comments must be directed towards the board president, not members of the public. According to our bylaws, comment session can last no longer than 1 hour. This is an opportunity for the board to listen, but not debate issues or enter a question and answer period. Please be aware that not all issues brought up before the board meeting will be resolved that evening. We ask you to identify yourself by stating your name and the name of your street. You may make your comment to the board. While public education can be an emotional issue, we strive to maintain a level of decorum at the meeting. Public meetings are recorded and televised, and students are often participating in meetings. As such, citizens are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. And we ask too, if you're, for your initial statement, your initial comment, but if you're planning to make a second comment, wait until we call for second comments so that everyone gets a chance to do a first comment.
Third microphone.
There was not, I was doing feedback on
There
the,
was complaints about
yeah,
the
Okay.
microphone.
on the Google Meet.
So first I had a couple, Chris Maines, Roberts Avenue. First I had a couple thoughts on recent changes to board proceedings. On the positive side, moving all the public comment in the regular meetings into one session, I think is a huge improvement. It spares us all from having to wait till the very end to see if any other comments will be made, only to find that sometimes there are none. It spares you, the board, from having to discern what's really tied to an agenda item and what's not. So I think it was a good change. So thank you. On the flip side, there's no longer any mechanism for public two-way communication between the public and the board. I agree that having the superintendent reply to every question after every meeting via email is not an optimal use of his time. But without the board allowing itself to respond to even the most straightforward questions here in the meetings, there's effectively no way to have public dialogue or to get our questions answered short of a direct email exchange, which cuts the public out. My suggestion would be that if the speaker has a question and a response can be provided on the spot by the board, all within the speaker's 3-minute time limit, then that dialogue should be allowed. I think that you as board members would appreciate the opportunity to respond sometimes instead of just sitting there being talked at and not being able to respond. But let me shift to the Equity Council. I think it's detrimental to this district and our children's educational needs, and it should be abolished and perhaps rebuilt from the ground up, working on some of its goals. But let me just give a few reasons. Number one, and most importantly, there's an opportunity cost to everything when limited resources must be allocated among competing priorities. I know just from my small circle of friends, 2 special needs children who were being failed, while the director of special education is being pulled, and let me be clear, this is not aimed at the director of special education personally, or the job she's doing, but the fact that she's being pulled into equity council tasks and taken away from her primary job as the director of special education. This leads to number 2, the equity council's bylaws. They've stated since the council's inception, that its goals are to adopt practices that are radically transformative and deviate from Western perspectives. When this became public, the goals that were posted publicly on the district's website were quickly updated to something more benign. Is this what the taxpayers of our district are asking for, practices that are radically transformative and deviate from Western perspectives? I'm not sure what exactly that's supposed to mean, but I don't like the sounds of it. Third, the Equity Council is ideologically biased to an insane degree. Somebody did some research. Of 33 members, 26 are registered Democrats, which not absolutely, but generally will correlate with views to one side. 6 are unknown or unaffiliated, and there's 1 Republican, 26 to 1. It's not, doesn't speak well for diversity of thoughts and inclusion. So I think the Equity Council is tainted beyond repair. We should take its legitimate goals, built from the ground up, with representation from all sides. Thank you.
Scott Wasserman, West Summit Avenue. Before I get started, based on what I'm hearing, I'd like to make a recommendation. I'm willing to help out here. If you've ever evaluated OKRs, objectives, key results, it's a very lightweight framework. I've used it in business. It's very transformative, where you set objectives for groups, for quarters and years, and they're measured at the end of those periods. And they're also public. Every group knows what the objectives are of other groups, and then I think it's also a good way to show the public of what the objectives are. I personally, I can't tell from the mission statement exactly what tactically it means, and I think I would personally find that really valuable, and I'm willing to kind of give you my knowledge. This is something that was created by Andy Grove, Intel, popular Google. Anyhow, I think that might help a little bit in giving at least the beginning framework based on what I've heard. Also, I'm not easily deterred. So last time that's fine. So I have one child at HS, one in elementary. I'm also requesting that I get a whole 3 minutes. If I'm interrupted, I'm going to add that to the end of the time. So I wanted to first start by calling out the idea of banning books that provide valuable, empathetic perspective on different lives as both morally wrong and the start of a very dangerous path. Additionally, there are books that have come under fire for being read to kindergartners by their teachers. I did my research here. For example, Jack Not Jackie was brought up at one of these meetings. Everything that I can see that was actually not taught, or the teachers did not read these books to the kindergartners. Disinformation like this is being treated as fact. Someone even accused Webster's dictionary of being too woke, which is not just ridiculous, but dangerous. Also, while researching Jack Not Jackie, I wasn't able to find a list of books that is consistently brought up. Where exactly is this located? When was it shared with parents that have been in Haddonfield Pair for 10 years? I can't locate it. I hear this come up all the time, and I'd like to actually see that if it exists. And if it doesn't exist, then we need to stop that conversation. Now, I want to give some perspective here on why I'm bringing this up. My entire paternal family tree were European Jews, okay? Except for 3 months.
But you can come back on.
All right.
Once everyone goes.
name is Wayne Shu of Center Street. I don't need to tell you anymore. First of all, I want to start by thanking you for serving. So number one, I'll be brief on that. I have 3 points because it was already covered, and it really has to do with just the communication back and forth from the board, in some way having people put out whatever side of any issue you happen to be on, not knowing what the result or intake happens to be from the board. So I would support that. 2, topic is the Equity Council, and I was happy to hear a lot of that discussion. I agree that a lot of the material seems like a lot is on trying to be under 110. So the idea of restructuring sounds like a great idea, and sometimes restructuring is really better if you just get rid of it. I also think it's a horrible name. It connotes way too many things, but has valuable aspects to it. So I think some serious thought needs to be given to that, and maybe an entirely different approach, and certainly with a broader constituency. And third, I'd like to make a suggestion, and the topic has to do with a gentleman by the name of Bob Woodson. Mr. Woodson is the head of the Woodson Institute. He's also a veteran of the civil rights movement, and he is a gentleman who, along with Thomas Sowell and Shelby Steele, have really modeled some curriculum ideas, some teaching ideas, instructional ideas, especially in the Black community, as you might well imagine by his credentials, that really are success-based and uplifting. So just to give you an example, how many people do you think realize that in the 1950s and early 60s, that over 100 cities in this town, in this country, were either entirely Black or largely Black? This is the Jim Crow days. Banks didn't make loans to Black people. Nonetheless, they had their churches, no surprise. Mercantile, that's not a surprise, but they had banks and insurance companies. How was that done? That basis of success is something that we all really ought to know more about and should be in some ways imparted in a curriculum, which I'll get back to. Another thing we don't really know very much about is in that same time period, the successful marriage rate for Blacks was either equal to or greater than whites. Again, another factor from a social point of view that would imbue pride in people who happen to be Black, and from whites, and understanding that these folks made it through a period in time, not as victims. They didn't strive, they thrived. So I think this is something we really need to take a look at. To that point, for reasons other than my engagement with Mr. Woodson really had more to do with another topic, but I also asked him about what the possibilities might be to aid in creating some type of curriculum that maybe is part of the new to be determined Equity Council name, broadly speaking, or in some way or another, really put into our curriculum. I think this borough really has an opportunity to be a leader in this thought.
Okay.
Hello, Carol Stoner, Avondale Avenue. Jamie Brookett said the following information on 9/22, reporting from the curriculum report. September 28th, professional development. They're going to begin the process for teachers and principals to pause and take a look at the curriculum content and curriculum maps. We've come across some areas, and this is the board report, where there's curriculum content that we're not sure how it got there. It's a disconnect. The teachers haven't used it, and we're unaware of it being there. So what they really want to do is go through it and flag anything that's incongruent with what is happening in the classroom. We anticipate this being completed in the next few weeks. How do you not know how books got into the curriculum? It appears that our curriculum has been hijacked by some curriculum map, and no one is willing to tell us by whom. Nor does this Board of Education care to answer to the taxpayers of what is going on. After I requested an open public records access to our administrator, Mike, everything to do with how the George book got snuck into the curriculum, I now understand what the Board of Education has done, and I will be back at the end to speak about it.
Yeah. I want to thank Mr. Klaus for mentioning the improvement in the audio that we're looking forward to. I see the reverberating microphone is gone and all the work is done by this excellent microphone, so that's good. And I'm glad to see you move the camera so your speakers could be seen, so people know who is speaking. Don't start the mic yet. Don't start the timer yet. I gotta get to my little app here. I'm gonna read this to stay within my time limit.
Feel free to say your name.
Sorry. My reader. If I may, start.
Name and street, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Walter Weidenbacher.
It starts as soon as you come up here. It starts as soon as you come up here, so you're.
I'll talk fast, don't read this whole thing. If I may, I'd like to spend the next 3 minutes talking about appearance, transparency, and most important, communication. I'd like to be telling you what I'm about to say in a friendly, private setting. Actually, I've tried that, but to little avail, and so we're saddled with official protocol, so here it is. I would expect that these meetings as meetings of the minds, but frankly, after a half year of sitting on that side of the wide chasm that separates us, I have seen these meetings as little more than a charade of communication. In the movie Cool Hand Luke, the mean prison warden, after beating prisoner Luke and kicking him into a ditch, a chasm, says, "What we have here is a problem of communication." That line often comes to mind as I sit here listening to these proceedings. I know we all mean well in our hearts, but it just seems to me so much of the time that some of you on your side of the chasm, how many, I don't know, it just seems, are not even trying to understand those folks way back there. Even though this might not be the case, and even though a great poet once warned, things are not what they seem, Longfellow, I'm just saying, it seems that way, and I thought you might like to know. In the past, I've seen, how am I moving? In the past, I've seen it happen where sincere concerns are too often not addressed sincerely, and the rules for communication are changing now faster than you can say, now you see it, now you don't, with little, if any, rationale given. This makes for the appearance of a sham operation, even though it might not be. Most recently, it was announced the district would no longer even attempt to answer public concerns. What? Why do we even have public comments? What's the point? Published curriculum is not really available in a friendly way. I'll be back.
Stacy Brown. I am not a resident of Haddonfield. I'm a Haddonfield educator. I am one of these building equity leaders. And I think that from hearing the comments tonight that we are not that far out of disagreement, in terms of the sides of this. The plan for the Equity Council was to do just as Lynn suggested, to start with educating ourselves and addressing our own biases, then to get into committees, and then to bring it to a building level, which is exactly what we are starting to do this year. Pausing the Equity Council at this time, I think, is not a great idea. I think that people who have been involved in the Equity Council should still continue this process of bringing it to the building levels, of getting it out of this higher level. I think the Zoom meetings were part of our issue, that as we were getting back to real life, that having our meetings on Zoom wasn't the most effective way for us to engage as human beings. I love the idea of bringing other voices into the fold. In fact, one of the conversations that we had reflects one of the concerns that parents are bringing up tonight, that how do we teach about injustice while uplifting our marginalized groups and empowering and showing all the ways that they have succeeded, all the ways that our marginalized groups have been able to thrive despite oppression. So I think we're on a similar page in terms of these goals and concerns. So I just would like to express my gratitude to Carmen, who was our building equity leader for 2 years, who is not only somebody who has to navigate systems that are maybe not designed for a Black administrator, but also really worked hard to bring multiple voices into this and to bring us to where we are now, which is at this place where we are able to start bringing this to a building level. And to, when you're doing equity work, regardless of whether you like the term or not, if it doesn't create conversation, if it doesn't shake things up, you're not doing anything. You're just maintaining status quo. So the fact that we are having these conversations tonight and in previous nights shows that this work is actually impactful. It makes it difficult, it makes it challenging, but it makes it worthwhile. So I urge you to stay the course. I urge us to be able to return to the table to talk about, because I think many of us are in agreement that we're in a place where we're ready to think about this in a different way. And then if we're going to a building level, then how do we create that oversight? So all these things you're talking about tonight are very much in line with the structure that Carmen and all the administrators and educators and parents in that group discussed. So that is just my point of view in terms of a place where I think we are a lot closer on this issue than perhaps people might realize. Thank you.
Any other first comments?
Derek Bosnick, Marty Lane, 2 children in Tatum. I just want to say, first of all, thanks to the board for dealing with the opt-out form so quickly. It really meant lots to the parents in the district because it wasn't real clear at the beginning. And thanks for what you do. It's a tough job. Okay, you got to hear all sides of the argument. My concern really is with the Equity Council and the mission statement that Chris brought up earlier, how it's radically transformative and deviated from Western perspectives. My concern with the Equity Council is not that they're bringing diversity to these kids and showing these kids different people, different religions, different everything. That's a good thing. But my concern is that the council potentially could bring in critical race theory and radical gender theory. There are things I don't think our kids should be learning, and I don't think the Equity Council has any place bringing it in. I know the Equity Council is working with Dr. Zine, as mentioned in the past, and I know Dr. Zine has presented on critical race theory in the past. I just don't want the Equity Council tearing down some Western traditions, like Lower Marion just canceled their grade school Halloween parades, citing a lack of inclusivity. Okay, I think that's wrong. I don't think that's the role of the Equity Council or any district to be taking away these Western traditions. And I just hope that this board and the Equity Council, in whatever form it takes, is sensitive to that. Thank you.
Jeff Stoner, Avondale Avenue, and I will echo, I think, voices that have said that the issues of how to have our kids feel more included, how to have them understand the world around them in a broader view, are all very important goals, not just for them, for us also. However, the Equity Council, the way that it was formed, the way it has been operating, is not the vehicle to do it. The Equity Council has started, and it was said before, it was a closed group of people who had a particular mindset of what was going on, who have come from one view, from a political, or appears to be very tilted one view, politically and socially, and did not include the entire community. In order for a program like this to be successful, you have to engage the parents, because the parents are the primary teachers at home of kids being more accepting. And instead, what we had through the Equity Council was a group that was very exclusive. You were not allowed to get in. You weren't even allowed to go to a meeting unless you had permission from the group. How do you think that makes the community feel about something like the Equity Council that was structured to keep people out unless you were on their side of the topic? That does not lend itself to having community unity on this, on issues we could have a lot of unity on, but now we can't. You've cast a die now with this group that says, you know what, it's tainted. We can't trust that group. Maybe through a lot of work and retooling and having open discussions about how can we tackle these really important topics. And by including more community and a broad view, people of faith, different political views, different backgrounds and things like that, perhaps we can make progress as a community. But the way it is now, the way the Equity Council has started, the way it's structured, its lack of accountability, the way it ran off in one direction and made statements that had to be pulled back by the board and the superintendent, we have no trust in that group. So don't try to work around the edges with the Equity Council. There's a lot of people here who will not believe that that is a group that can never be behind it. And all you'll have is just more meetings like this where people will not trust what's going on. As a community, we need to pull together, not to be fighting against each other. And this structure will just result in us not trusting each other and going back and fighting over stuff that we really shouldn't. A lot of it we shouldn't be fighting on. Some we will. There's no doubt about it. There are political elements involved with that. We will disagree on that. But we need to have a foundation, and the Equity Council is not the group to do it.
Jennifer Watson, virtual. I just wanted to share my story about the Equity Council, and it's one of the reasons I'm here tonight because I agree with what the last speaker just said, that it needs to have people from all walks of life and all different points of view, and that's not what it has right now. In March of 2022, I emailed 4 times with someone who was on the Equity Council, and I had some questions. I wanted to know, how do you become a member of the Equity Council? Who are the members of the Equity Council? Are the meetings public? What are the agendas, etc.? I never received a list of who was on the Equity Council. I never received any procedure or application to how you become a member. The website and the agendas and everything were behind and not up to date. So it wasn't very inclusive. I've heard a lot of people here tonight talk about belonging, and that the Equity Council is wants everyone to feel like they belong and the students to belong. And I don't think that it has accomplished that. And when you talk about equity and you look up that word, it leads directly to critical race theory. I think that what the other gentleman said about talking more about equality, making sure that everybody feels uplifted, and making sure that everybody has the same opportunities. I think that is a much more inclusive way to talk about these type of topics, because a lot of the equity stuff that goes on intimidates and makes other students feel bad about themselves. And that's something that has to be taken into consideration. So just wanted to let you know, once again, very difficult to get any type of communication and any type of, I guess, response and moving forward in a positive direction. Thank you.
Going up the roads, West Cottage Avenue. So I want to address the fact that there is an issue with the word equity, because equity comes from finance, not from social life. If we want to talk social and we want to address everyone the same way, there's a huge word that we all know. It's called equality. And this is the right name of naming it. Now, from the discussion that you had here tonight about the equity, which finally we had an open discussion with us listening what's going on, all I've heard is that you all had good intentions. But the good, as we all know, the road to hell paved with a lot of good intentions. And the worst thing that you missed up in this whole opportunity, instead of speaking about how the teachers, and the teachers and survey with the teachers, the first person that you need to include here is actually the parents. We, the parents here, are the one who paid, paying for the taxes for this, for the education in town. We are the parents who are sending our kids, and this is about our kids. So the first thing you should do is actually survey between our parents. No one else except the parents. Get the feedback from the parents because we are here. We're the one who elected you to represent us, not the teachers. And you're supposed to work with us about what's going on in the school system. Now, regarding the fact that you said the work of the Equity Council was paused, it's kind of mind-boggling for me because just this week I read in the prospect that actually the Equity Council is still working with that Shelley Zion lady. And when I researched about that Shelley Zion, and others here also made a reference to it, about 10 years ago, this lady published a paper, and I'm quoting from her paper. The title was Capitalizing Inclusion, Can Critical Race Theory and Interest Convergence Be Utilized, Achieve Inclusion and Equity for African Students? That's the whole thing. What about the other students who are not African American? What about me? Immigrant, Jewish woman of color, here in this United States. Why I'm not included in this? That's my question here.
Any other first?
Hi, Liz Lehman, Birchall Drive. And I just, want to agree with most of the comments that were said tonight. I think the mission statement of this council was, very aggressive. And I think, we've talked a lot about all these surveys being sent out to what the last speaker said. I think we should be involving parents' feedback and asking, maybe surveying them to see if they think a council like this is the right way to spend resources. I think if you had sent something out to say we're forming a council to radically transform the school and deviate from Western principles, I don't know that you would have gotten a great response. I mean, try it. So I think that's really important is to, I'm thinking back to when the council was formed, and I know a lot of the work was done in the summer of 2020. When my daughter, my third grader, returned to school in the fall, she only had 20 minutes of live instruction for most of the year. So when I think about all this research, think about all the churn, all the discussion, even tonight we're spending on this, when there are so many other more important things, especially academics, which is the main reason we send our kids to school. So I would really like the board to consider, I think just scratching this all together and then starting something new. And again, I think a focus on equality, not equity, because obviously equity means that everyone's going to come out with the same outcome, and that is not possible. Thank you.
Any other first comments? Okay, second round. We have like 20 minutes, so. So we only get 3 though.
Continuing. So the published curriculum I was talking about communication between the public and the parents and the board and the district. The published curriculum is not readily available in a user-friendly way and is hardly definitive. This is a major concern to any parent intently interested in what their children are learning. And it's wrong that this should happen. And the big concern, my big concern, is that parents' God-given responsibility and sovereignty over their own children is being ignored or thwarted at every turn by the district and by the board with the inclusion of curriculum that the parents don't even know about when it's being put into the curriculum. They're not readily advised of what's in the curriculum. And and their rightful sovereignty over the children is being, I said, thwarted. This cannot go on forever, and I'm sure it will not. And I'd just like to add, since I guess I have a little more time, I think everything that I heard about the Equity Council is poorly named. I think that the word equity should be considered very carefully in terms of what the word equity means. I'm not going to go into the various definitions to it, but the Equity Council should go the way of the dodo bird and some other kind of a council. And I just got a text from somebody, probably in the audience. Thank you.
Carol Stoner, Avondale Avenue. I moved to this town for academics 31 years ago. That's why young families have moved here too. I live in a house too small for 7 people, pay taxes higher than most of the people in the United States, but I was told that Haddonfield was about a great education, and it was. But that is clearly no longer the case. I opened up my son's 9th grade accelerated English curriculum, which was changed in 2021, only to find that the curriculum that prepared my other children for all their Ivy League schools has been changed. And I quote, Accelerated English 9 introduces students to a variety of literary genres, but more importantly, depicts the ways individuals struggle to fight injustices in society, which inspires us to do the same. This quote is the core pacing guide for every single lesson in English Accelerated 9. A far cry from the curriculum in 2008 that my kids were challenged by and enjoyed for their academic success. I also discovered that there is now an Amistad integration, which is only required in social studies by the state of New Jersey, and the Holocaust genocide education in every single course, in every single grade in our entire school district. Look it up. Upon thorough investigation, I see that the George book is listed in 5th grade language arts and is listed under the Amistad integration. Upon further investigation of the Amistad integration, there are things that start with the letters SJ.17. Look this up. Everybody look at your curriculum. You would think that this would be some New Jersey course standard, right? No. They refer to social justice standard teaching tolerance package that is in every single course in every single grade. This is what is in it, social justice standards, not New Jersey core. You see, the Amistad integration is a Trojan horse for the hijacked curriculum that this board allowed to seep into every single one of our courses over the last few years. I request that this board immediately reverse all curriculum that was changed by whoever hijacked our curriculum map and return all curriculum to the pre-hijacked stage. Because mark my words, academic excellence is not a guarantee. It is earned, and it's just a short amount of time when the fall of Haddonfield educational excellence will be here, and you will watch your home values fall. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Sharon. I live on Green Mountain Road. I am here in support of the Equity Council. Many of you know I am on the Equity Council. I also found the first year incredibly valuable as we built up as a team, and I thought the second year we were smaller, but did start to identify work that to be done and hadn't quite gotten there yet. I think Lynn's suggestion to hear from the teachers what they thought would be really, would be great. The numbers that Gina shared, I thought were really interesting to me. I probably archived that email, but I will go dig it up. But the fact that our schools are landing in different nationwide percentiles, it's not just natural dips because there's middle school to high school, middle school sucks, nobody wants to go to middle school. I think that indicates to me that there is a reason to have a district-wide initiative. I hear the talk, and I appreciate your guys' open dialogue and these things. I think you guys are saints, to be honest. But anyway, there is, it sounds like there's precedent with the math council, copy that, whatever has to be put in place to, you know, do this legit to make sure that we're doing it. But like Chuck said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Additionally, the equity council was open call. A parent, I got an email, I responded to it. Anyone could have responded to it. Yes, we were still figuring out how it worked, so it wasn't, you couldn't just jump in and join it. In the second year, we were working on how that worked. That was part of what the bylaws were meant to be, and they would put the cart before the horse of it. None of the nefarious descriptions that I've heard tonight match anything that, you know, I experienced. It was open call, maybe, you know, I don't think that the fact that everyone was registered in a particular political party, that is indisputable evidence that it was biased. Maybe that says more about the other political party. And let's see what else. That's about it. I hope you guys will consider keeping the equity council, make the changes that need to be made, bring it to the board, whatever has to happen. But know that there are lots of people in the community that support it, that aren't coming out week after week to, you know, have fun here in this room, sharing their opinion every time, that do support it. So please consider that. And we elected you guys, and I think you all have your finger on the pulse of the community and know people, and you know, we trust you and elected you to make these decisions. And thank you for doing that.
Scott Wasserman, West Summit. Interestingly, I know our favorite dictionary, Webster's. I know we're arguing about the word equity, but the first thing is justice according to natural law or right, specifically freedom from bias and favoritism. Arguing about the name is window dressing to what the actual issues that we're trying to discuss are here. It's kind of absurd. So anyhow, the fact that we spent time arguing about the name of the council is kind of absurd. I'll bring it back to what I was saying, and actually dovetails very nice into the person before here. So again, I'm gonna give you some perspective. My entire paternal family were European Jews, with the exception of my grandparents that were born here. I haven't been able to track down a lot of my family, okay? And, you know, I'm sure, just like other people in this community who have that lineage, that they were persecuted, enslaved, or killed, okay? And one early precursor to the Holocaust, and if we had it as part of our curriculum, you'd actually know this, was the banning and burning of books. In that same year, 1933, we started the concentration camps. Now, I'm not trying to make a direct parallel here, but if I had the ability to go back to 1930 and talk to people in Germany to try to wake up a little bit about what was happening, and without question, I would do it. Like, without question. And I want to be totally clear. I'm not calling anyone in our community a Nazi of any stretch of imagination, but I'm asking us to pause and think about what we're doing. The frog in the boiling pot, do you remember that fable? Didn't know what was coming, okay? We're on a really scary path here. And I want to extend an invitation to the community to have a casual, fact-based, nonpartisan discussion. I will buy you coffee or get you beer at King's, can I say King's Road? I don't know if I'm allowed to say King's Road.
Don't ask me.
I want to have this dialogue because with the energy that's been in this room, it's tough, I'm sure for you, the folks here, to even have a meaningful conversation. And I think it's possible. We're not going to agree. We might not even like each other, but I don't hate anyone, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. But the way we're doing it, and I've pulled this back myself from social media, I'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody, and please, you know, fine. Thank you.
Chris Main, 7 Roberts Avenue. Just going off the cuff here to second what Scott just said. He and I were Facebook enemies. We thought each other were the devil until last week. We met face to face, talked, and I take him on his word. I haven't talked to him for a while. We do need more of that. Less of the social media bashing of each other. More of the face to face. I actually like the guy. I think he likes me. I don't know. But anyway, I wouldn't have thought that before the last meeting. It's just totally different when you're face to face, and we should have more of that. So I'm just here to second what he said.
Okay, any more? Great week. And on some positivity, so that was good. Thank you all again for coming and commenting, and we are listening, and we know there are it's hard, and we all have our own concerns, and we thank you for coming out and joining us and for sharing your ideas, and I hope that you will take up some people on their offers for coffee or what have you. So thank you. Okay, we will move on to our agenda. It is a non-voting session, so we're just going to give everyone a couple seconds to look it over and discussion. Items for governance, any discussion?
Can I ask questions of the policy committee on the grooming and dress policies? It specifically concerning two things, missing shoes, so it's missing any guidance on footwear, because, you know, there's lots of choices there. But more importantly, the part that says that some of the inappropriate attire, so we see t-shirts with writing, images, advertising, and brands. I'm concerned about a couple things. One, the Haddonfield brand, so, you know, a lot of staff like to fly the H, like to fly the dog. It sounds like it wouldn't be allowed. From the other one is more the other images. I wouldn't want to see us unintentionally restrict their ability to have pride in organizations. But without being political.
I think it specifically meant like t-shirt, like do you think like they should be able to wear Haddonfield t-shirts? Because I think that's what they mean.
To your point, HEA shirts, right, I guess.
Yeah, it's where I'm going.
So I hadn't considered that, right? That's something we can.
It would be restricted under this. I don't think that's something we'd want to restrict though.
I don't think that's our intent.
No, but
It meant just to like not walk around with like a big Nike t-shirt.
Well,
Yeah, that's what I was.
Something like that, you know what I
I
mean?
get it, but
But
intent
no, that's a
and,
good point.
Right, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what we consider wording that.
Yeah.
We have to talk more about that.
Yeah, we'll just.
on both, on the staff and the staff and the faculty
Right,
ones,
yeah.
right, they're the same.
Footwear is
I agree
a
on
good
the
thing because
shoes.
I,
I remember like in high school, if you were wearing sandals, they had to have closed toe and a
yeah,
strap
it was
around the
usually an
ankle.
insurance issue, or do we
Yeah.
enforce that? Is that a insurance?
He's my insurance
Sir?
guy now, so.
I mean, I'll give you for example, I know maintenance staff, they're not wearing shoes.
Well, we're saying shoes.
Shoes, like sandals,
Closed toe.
like someone rolling in with flip flops.
Yeah, they are, or they, no, they're not.
Yeah, they should not, our JIF would not like it if we permitted flip flops.
Yeah, so we
My
should probably
staff,
put
all
something in
staff.
there. I remember when I was teaching, we weren't allowed. That's why it's better. And mules were big back.
I remember it was really hard to find sandals, like, we don't have air conditioning.
Everyone's got the thing.
Yeah.
If I were king of the realm, then we'd get on a plane with flip flops on.
Oh.
Wow, just a speed.
Thanks, Dave.
And
For the-
No,
And you know what, another thing I thought of, about this, maybe it's something we should probably talk about at our next meeting, is to whether or not, regardless of what version of this winds up being approved, whether there should be any consideration delaying implementation. If there are, so say there's a teacher who just happens to be 50% of what he or she wears is now targeted. Are we expecting that teacher now to go out and furnish a whole new wardrobe? Or I think we have to have some sort of discussion about some grace period, with this. I was just thinking about that as like.
I think that's fair. You have maybe at least wait a season in case they just bought their new
Yeah.
wardrobe.
I think we have
Their
to.
t-shirt and sandal wardrobe.
I'm just saying, I don't think I bought clothes since COVID, so. Oh, any other, comments or questions? Question. Okay, well, are we ready to move on to curriculum and special education?
Sorry, on item D for our resolution, as soon as that, assuming it's approved, that'll get sent to all the people named in the resolution.
Can you repeat
Not-
that?
not-
I don't know.
not- you're not-
Oh, you're still in government.
Oh,
I was like, wow.
It's like, no, before we move on.
With resolution.
That was my one question,
It would
yeah,
get sent to.
Oh, it does.
all of those people listed.
so that's the point, okay, yes. Again, nice job drafting it, yes.
But you got it rolling.
Not everyone has access to it. Like, I can't click on it.
You click the request access button.
And I sent it in the minutes. Can you see it on that?
Go ahead,
It's in the, yeah,
go ahead, just.
I did.
Okay, sorry.
I think the BOE email
It
sometimes
did.
works and sometimes
Yeah,
doesn't.
sometimes it works, sometimes.
Yeah.
So are we on, curriculum and special education now, or?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Any questions, comments there? All right, moving on to personnel. I was curious, I saw that we don't have, something went out, there's not the COVID vaccines for the younger kids.
Yeah.
Does
so-
that impact the people that we've hired?
Yeah, the impact people that were hired, no, it
Okay.
impact the number of registrants we had for today's clinic. We originally had like 135, so we went down to 100 because the pharmacist actually got a notice from the CDC or Department of Health last night around 7 o'clock that they're pulling back on. They're not giving that shot to those younger students because something else is coming out next week.
I think, my understanding, because I signed up my 2 kids,
Yeah.
just one had COVID, so we had to delay, so I was like, I'll wait for the clinic, so thank you for doing that, I rely on you. But I think it's, the younger kids were getting the old booster.
Yep.
And they just approved, they have the new booster, so they don't want to give the old booster.
That's-
He's,
Oh, they
That
did
was
today.
they said today, they hope that particular pharmacy hopes to have it on Tuesday, it takes a day to defrost, so
Yeah.
possibly Wednesday, they will be ready to vaccinate.
And they're really good.
Is it
I mean,
apples?
you can go
Yeah.
right to the pharmacy.
Right,
You
and that's
schedule
what,
an
today, and
appointment.
they were like, "Come,"
It's,
yeah.
That's where we went, that was great.
Yeah, and it's not a traditional pharmacy. They're more a pharmacy that
That's in an office park.
they supply pharmacies with their stuff. So it's kind of like an industrial, with a waiting room. So it's not like walking to a CVS. It's right off of Haddonfield, Berlin Road. So it's literally a 5-minute drive from you.
Okay, have questions for business and finance?
I have one question. So, Mike, on the comprehensive maintenance plan report, so the items are like exactly the same between 21, 22 actual to 2022 budgeted to 23, 24 plan. And I mean, down to like plumbing repairs, sewer pipe replacement, door and frame replacement. So are those things in there as like placeholders that like if we need these things, that's what's covered?
It's sort of just make sure we include everything so that if we don't include something, we don't get nicked on, well, you said you didn't need this, but now you want to you want to include this aspect of.
Okay,
of
so we have to
maintaining the
name that
facilities.
in advance, that like this could potentially, like it says, sewer pipe replacement, so I don't think that we're gonna be doing that for 3 years, but we put that in there just in case we need to, so that we say, okay, that was.
We'll never, so this is a, first and foremost, this is a QSAC, exercise, we call it, and, they'll never ding us for putting in too much, they would ding us for not putting.
I just wanted to understand, so it wasn't like, these are the actual things, this is the broad categories of what, got it, thank you.
It's the maintenance LRFP. If it's not on there, you can't do it.
Okay, and then how about the minutes? Any questions?
F is from this evening's discussion. First. Okay. The settlement agreement.
Yeah,
That's
got it. Okay, items for future consideration by the board. I had something that someone brought up to me that I thought was something that we thought was, good, that we just don't do, I think, because I didn't have a reason, but they did it in a district that they're in. Is for public comment, we put public member says blah, blah, blah. But if we can put the name and initial or something, or name, I guess first name, I don't know.
In the minutes?
In the minutes. I don't know, I mean, when we can, maybe, I don't know. Just an idea, I'm really just throwing it out there. People.
My initial reaction would just be to put initials. I know that we don't put comments of board members in those meeting minutes, and I just think it would be fair to not. I feel like there could be accusations of injustice, unfairness, and what if we miscapture something? I think it's important to put it in there, but maybe less personal.
Yeah, no, that's right, because then we kind of have the liability of making sure we've captured their essence. Yeah. Which, it's
Mike
true,
is
but
good
it's
for
hard.
these and the court report.
Yeah, so all right, that's. Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Steph, Dave, meeting adjourned.